This is the Future Christian Podcast, a conversation about church leadership, fresh ideas, and the future of the church.
Today, I'm welcoming Dave Runyon to the show. Dave helps faith, business, and government leaders unite around common causes in the Denver metro area of Colorado. He serves as the executive director of City Unite and as a consultant for businesses who have a desire to make a positive impact in their communities. Dave helped to start a neighboring movement that has now spread to over 2,500 churches across the country. This experience prompted him to co-author The Art of Neighboring, which was published by Bigger Books and has sold over 150,000 copies. He speaks locally and nationally, encouraging leaders to collaborate for the good of their cities. Before founding City Unite, Dave served as a pastor for 10 years at Foothills Community Church and the Next Level Church. He graduated from Colorado State University, where he studied history, economics, and education. Dave and his wife Loren have 4 kids and do not plan to have any more. Please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast or share Future Christian with a friend. You can be sure to follow Loren, Martha, and Future Christian on Instagram. We appreciate your thoughts and perspectives as together we discern the future of the church. So thanks for helping make this independent podcast possible. Hey, welcome to the show. This is Loren Richmond Jr., and I'm pleased to be joined today by Dave Runyon. Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to the show.
Great to be with you, Loren.
Yeah, for those who don't know anything about you, tell us just real quick, who you are, what you enjoy, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I live here in the Denver metro area, up in Westminster, right between Denver and Boulder. 4 kids, almost an empty nester, 1 year away from being an empty nester. And I run a nonprofit called City Unite. We help faith, government, business leaders work together to focus on the needs of the city and to mobilize people to serve those who are under-resourced.
Yeah. Talk about your journey of faith, what's that looked like in the past and what that looks like today.
Yeah. I grew up in an incredible Christian home, and was kind of like a, lukewarm believer for most of my formative years. Kind of had my fun friends and then had my little church friends, and never the two shall meet. And so I kind of had a segmented understanding of God and what it meant to follow Jesus. And a lot of that is because this isn't what my parents kind of gave me, but how I viewed the Christian faith was the end game was to say a prayer, put your faith in Jesus so that you could go to heaven when you die. And then just try not to sin as much as possible for the rest of your time here on earth. So I had a very limited understanding of the gospel for a lot of my life, my formative years, which led me to kind of this segmented kind of, I wouldn't say apathetic, but just kind of a very unhelpful version of following Jesus. Halfway through college, I was just around some people that started to open up my eyes. And the big thing that dropped for me was just this, the kingdom theology, this idea that I think faith in Jesus is important, all of that stuff. But I was missing this huge part that was once you decide that you're going to follow Jesus, that God has invited us to partner with him in redeeming and healing the brokenness that we see in the world around us. And so that gave me a vision and a mission and a purpose that helped me just jump all in and kind of go from a lukewarm believer into somebody who was actually driven and motivated by my relationship with God. And so, yeah, that was it was like a second conversion for me.
Yeah. Share, if you would, anything you're willing to share about spiritual practices, something you find meaningful?
Well, the ones that come most natural to me is I've just always had an incredible community. I've had deep friendships and people that would walk with me, that I'm walking with, that are holding up a mirror to me, celebrating the good stuff, and also calling out some of the stuff that isn't okay. And so for me, just like intentional community, deep friendships with a few people has been a huge, huge part of my story. Something I've been trying to work on recently is just the practice of experiencing boredom, like shutting things, shutting things down, trying to create some space where I'm able to just notice things and experience a little bit more awe and wonder. I have like a severely underdeveloped right brain. And so that's not like natural for me, but it's something that I've just been trying to work on and to lean into more and more.
Yeah, gosh, I hear you there. I've been trying to just like, that temptation is so quick when I'm outside, for instance, just to like grab my phone and stare at it. I'm like, maybe I could just like notice the sky around me.
Yeah.
And the trees.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a new discipline that I'm trying to experience a little bit of.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your work more broadly in this kingdom theology, as you say, with City Unite, and you're also the author of a book I'm learning of the art of neighboring. So why don't you talk about your current role and how I guess you sort of already talked about how you found your way into the work, but maybe more specifically, like how, because from my understanding, like you worked beginning in the local church, right?
Yeah, actually, Loren, I first worked as a high school teacher and baseball coach. So I went to Colorado State University. I got out and I was a teacher and coach, and I was really content doing that. And then I fell backwards into ministry. I was going to like a large kind of attractional church with a lot of young people. I was friends with the lead pastor. He got sick. He probably asked like 7 or 8 other people to teach for him. And then he asked me, and I was like, just arrogant enough to say yes. And I remember sitting there like in the front row, getting ready to go up and teach. And the largest group that I taught to was like 30 high school kids.
Yeah.
And there was over 2,000 people in the room. And I remember going, God, I don't have this. Like, I wish I had more moments like this in my life, Loren. But I remember just going like, I need you to show up, God. I do not. What am I doing? I do not have this here. The rest is kind of a blur. But 2 months later, they came and asked me to be the teaching pastor. And so I had no formal training. It was kind of like in that era where that you could get away with that. And so I went from being a high school teacher to a teaching pastor at a large church overnight.
Wow.
And there's a lot of great things that happened there. There was also a lot of really hard things. And so I cut my teeth the hard way. And even from the start line, I was kind of an angsty pastor. I was always wrestling with the amount of time and energy that we were in money that we were putting into that like hour and 10 minutes every Sunday.
Yeah.
And we had it at an extreme versus what does it look like to walk with people, to disciple people, to help people engage into the needs of the city. And so even though the 2 churches, I did this for 10 years. So the 2 churches that I was a part of were great. And like there was a lot of amazing things that happened. They grew numerically. But I was like, I remember just like getting in my car a lot of times after, a Sunday, just going like, God, if this is success in ministry, I'm in trouble.
Wow.
Because this is leaving me like wanting. And I have so much respect for the pastors and leaders that teach every week. Like the burden of doing that is real. The weight of doing that is real.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. I had all this like unhealthy stuff inside of me of like performance and you're only as good as your last sermon and a lot of different stuff that wasn't very helpful for me personally and for my own health. And so I'm so grateful. I'm part of a great church now. I look at the people that are up there every week and creating a space for us to connect with God. And I'm really, really grateful. But it just wasn't the fit for me. So after 10 years of that, and during that time when I was leading as a pastor, I started to meet with other faith leaders, and I was in Arvada, out right outside of Denver. And I started to meet with other faith leaders around Denver and just have coffees and lunches and start to just kind of dream about like, what if there's a crew of us that were friends, and what if we were thinking about the city together? I got obsessed with John 17, with Jesus' last recorded prayer, where he prays for himself, then he prays for the disciples, and then he prays for all of us, prays for all the believers alive at that time, all the believers to come, and the thing that he prays for is unity.
Yeah.
And I just got obsessed with that text and just started to think, what would it look like to see unity happen in my part of the city? And as I started to hang out with other faith leaders and talk about that, I realized that was bubbling up in a lot of them as well. And so it was a really sweet time. The more that I leaned into that work of helping churches think about local mission together, including my own church, the more I just started to get energized, and it was really life-giving. And so that led me to leaving my role as kind of a full-time vocational pastor into starting City Unite. And City Unite's taken on some different iterations over the past 16 years. Early on, it was heavily focused on let's help faith leaders get to know each other, and then mobilize the people that are sitting in their pews towards common issues in their part of the city. Mm-hmm. And so we started to do that in Arvada, and then we started to help people out in Golden and in different parts of the metro area do that work. And we would, it was really simple. The formula for us was invite faith leaders into a room and then invite a civic leader. So we would invite the city manager or the police chief or the mayor, and we would just sit in a room and just say, hey, tell us your story. Tell us how you ended up doing what you're doing. There was always this common thread. Most people in civic life, especially at the local level, have had some sense of calling. And so there was a lot of commonality between the faith leaders and the civic leaders. And then we would always ask the civic leaders, okay, if you could wave a magic wand and change something in our city, if you could mobilize all the people that show up to all of our congregations every week around one thing, what is it that you would want us to go do? Or what do you think the smartest thing is for us to do? And then we would pray about what they shared with us, and then we would go and sometimes we'd have those meetings and be like, oh, that's cool. And nothing huge would happen, or a couple of congregations would get around something. But every once in a while, something would happen in one of those rooms, and we would say, okay, let's go after this together. The first thing we did was a big church and school partnership program where we had congregations start reaching out to local schools that were under-resourced and just start supporting the teachers, look for ways to, if there were budget cuts, to help with facilities. And it really push churches into the needs of the city. Because if you get involved in a local school, you get everything. You get single moms living below the poverty line. You get at-risk kids. You get addiction. You get it all. And so that's still, I think, one of the best things that congregations can do if they just want to look for a place to get engaged locally, is to go and to reach out to a local school, just start getting to know them, and to start dreaming about ways to partner with them. And then a few years after that, we started a neighboring movement in our community. We had a mayor that sat in one of those rooms and just said, if you guys want to really move the needle in our city, and he didn't see the irony in telling a bunch of pastors that they should think about starting a neighboring movement. He didn't realize he was basically telling us all that we should do the most basic thing that the Bible says. But it was convicting and beautiful. And so we did a thing where we took all 26 churches, kind of put their own agenda aside, and we started to talk from the front about this idea of what if when Jesus said, love your neighbor, he meant your actual neighbors too. Yeah. And so we have a little tool where people can make a commitment to learn their neighbors' names and to use their names when they see them, to be a part of throwing good parties, to invite neighbors into their home for a meal. And so that kind of the way that scaled, and that was something I didn't see coming, and kind of hijacked a good 5 or 6 years of my vocational life, going around and helping churches think about literal neighboring together.
Every time I have a conversation about neighboring on this podcast, it comes in a convicting way, because I remember, again, I only know, I think, the names of 2 of my neighbors. Yeah. It's not good. It's not good.
It's not good. Well, Loren, they say if you want to love somebody, it's helpful to know their first name.
Yeah. I'm remembering Alan Roxburgh. Go back and listen to that episode. Same point. Talk about the prayer luncheon and how that came to be, or your work with the prayer luncheon.
Yeah, the Colorado Prayer Luncheon is an institution that's about 40 years old. A man named Don Reverts, who was a Young Life leader for a while and then started an organization very similar to City Unite that was focused on like bringing different people from different sectors together to think about how can they bridge together to serve the city. So Don started doing this about 40 years ago, way before my time. He became a mentor to me. He's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now and how I'm doing what I'm doing now. And so, 1987, he and a small group of friends, started this prayer luncheon, and one of their central tenets was, hey, no matter who is in office, the governor, the mayor of the city, we are going to invite them to help us see the city through their eyes. And so, the goal has always been to create a bipartisan room of mostly Jesus followers who are listening to and considering what the local government leaders see. So we just think whoever God has kind of put in positions of authority, that we're supposed to honor them and pray for them. And to be able to do that, we try to give them space each year to come in to share a little bit about their heart. And then we'll do other things on the prayer lunch. And, there'll be a time we'll bring in a keynote speaker. And we've had crazy, Chuck Colson back in the day, Condoleezza Rice, Tony Campolo, all the, I could just list off all these incredible people that have come in to share with that audience.
Yeah. Joel Klatt was great this year.
Joel Klatt was incredible this year. Sometimes it'll be somebody like that's got a little bit of profile. Sometimes it'll be like Lisa Stevens from Hope House was incredible last year, sharing her story. So it's just become like an annual gathering of the Christian community in our state. And about 15 years ago, Don Reverts invited me to start doing that with him. He actually passed away this last year. And so he passed off the mantle to me and has allowed me to steward just an incredibly unique event in our city. And our hope is that it's not just one of those like glad-handing events where people come in and like say hey and feel like they're supposed to show up. But each year we're trying to pick out something where we can highlight a major need and invite the people that are part of that community to stay engaged in it throughout the year. And so when the migrant crisis was huge in the Denver metro area, we were able to mobilize that room in really practical ways to think about how to serve these people that were sleeping on the streets of our city. This year, we made a big push around mentoring to encourage people to think about, could they walk with others who are in need of a mentor? Last year, we talked about like the affordable housing crisis and some very practical ways that people could engage or that congregations could engage to help address the homeless and affordability issues that exist in our community.
Yeah. I think what has stood out to me the most in recent years, when we think about our political climate, our sociological climate in America, how, especially the last 2 years, I remember you've made a point from this stage to be like, listen, like we can have conversations with our political leaders, but let's do so respectfully. I've also noticed how like those political leaders are in the room. You had Mayor Mike Johnston. If I'm remembering correctly, Governor Polis also spoke this year, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And
Senator Hickenlooper, the Attorney General, like all those people come into that room, which is a gift. And we get a chance to reframe how the Christian community is interacting with them.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that they see on social media, from Christians and non-Christians, is pretty toxic. And I want to be careful to say this too, Loren. Like, it doesn't mean we're supposed to not have our convictions and strong beliefs. I just think we need to think as believers about our posture. What does it look like to hold on to our convictions and our beliefs and to be able to share our heart, our feelings, opinions with people, but to do it in a way where we're actually being kind and loving, and also like really clear. And that's hard to do, especially when things are emotional. It's hard to do for me at times. I get all that, but I think it's the best way to actually enact change. It's the best way to actually help people hear stories, hear opinions, and be able to like absorb them instead of just putting up their defenses and going, all right, here's another group of people that don't like me and that are, ticked off about something that I put into play.
Yeah. Let me ask you about this, because I just saw this in an article. I don't know if, as someone myself who tends to associate more with the political left, like this is something I see all the time. I'm wondering if you see it in other contexts. Like there's this tendency right now, especially amongst the political left, that like having a quote unquote purple church or being a part of a purple community is somehow like a sign of unfaithfulness, especially in like church spaces. It's like, how could you be a purple church? Like you're not truly standing up for what's right or what you believe in if you're even making space for folks on the other side of the political aisle. Like I imagine this is something you navigate in your work at the prayer luncheon and more broadly. Like talk more about how you've dealt with where you approach that conversation.
Yeah, I think that's coming like very loudly from both sides.
Yeah.
I think the number of congregations that exist today where there's people from both sides of the aisle that are like worshiping together, and I think those congregations are growing fewer and fewer.
Yeah.
It's, if you want to build a church and like build numbers, it's way easy. It's way easier to create rooms where you feel like everybody in here is like voting the same way that I am. And so I think that's for sure. I also think it's really dangerous. I think that I think it's recreating a lot of the echo chambers that exist. And I think it makes it really easy to start drifting towards congregations that are just deeply politically focused, as opposed to being like laser focused on Jesus and on God. And so it is so hard to hold the middle. And I don't even like that term, hold the middle. Because it suggests that you have to like water everything down and don't have convictions. But it's really hard to create environments where there are people who have different political opinions, who are worshiping together and following Jesus together. And so it's like you're walking a tightrope, and it's really hard, and you feel like you're on this like spectrum, and wherever you put yourself, everyone to one side disagrees with you, and everyone to the other side. And there's a few congregations that I watch do this and that are just doing it in beautiful ways. I think about Colorado Community Church and Robert Gelinas. I think he does this masterfully well. And there's others here in our community. But it's hard work in our current day. And it's hard work to do the unity thing. I mean, 10 years ago, doing the unity thing, and like I used to bring congregations together and say, hey, let's go after this in the city. And the number of congregations that were willing to do that was way higher than it is right now. I think that all the different things that exist right now in our current culture have made the unity thing harder, and it's made it harder to create churches and congregations where people from both sides of the aisle are in relationship together and in community together.
Yeah. Well, I want to keep asking about hard topics here. So for some of my listeners from the Denver Metro who are pastors, you probably recognize Dave's voice from, what were they called, Dave? Like these were like COVID updates for faith leaders back in the day.
Yeah.
So if I remember correctly, it was you and Amanda Henderson, who some of my mainline friends around the Denver Metro. Yes. So shout out to Amanda.
Amanda's amazing. She's now a city council person. Amanda's incredible. She's done so many interesting things in our city. One of the things she's doing now, she's a city council person in Littleton, which mad respect to Amanda. Incredible.
Yeah. So obviously, like, you know a thing or two, I guess is what I'm saying, about like urgent messaging. Like that was the whole point of those faith leader calls, was you'd come out and say like, hey, here's the latest what's happening with COVID and the numbers and what the recommendations are from the governor, from the health officials.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that to ask, like, we're living in a time and place, like, since COVID, there's really been this pressure on pastors to respond to every major event or controversy, like, immediately.
Yeah.
I see this all the time, more often on one side than the other. But again, that may be just my algorithm. Maybe both sides are doing it.
Yeah.
Like, if your pastor doesn't say this, leave that church.
Right. Well, can I go back and give you a little bit of the context of COVID?
Yeah.
I think it might be helpful.
Yeah.
So in the early days, very, very early on, I think it was March, Governor Polis reached out. And I run a clergy council that helps different faith leaders come together and connect with, the governor, the mayor of Denver, and those different things. And Polis reached out, and early in COVID in Southeast Asia, some of like the flare-ups happened around faith communities that were coming together. And so his thought was, listen, faith communities are going to be crucial in this process. I wonder how I can talk to as many of them as possible and to do it on a regular basis. And to Governor Polis's credit, he reached out to me and he said, Dave, I will give you time every other week. Can you get me on a Zoom, on a call with as many faith leaders as possible throughout the state? And there was such an urgency among faith leaders. Everybody was trying to figure out which way is up. How do we do this? What is it going to be? And now this took on a whole, this was a journey, but early on, everybody, the first call we had 1,100 faith leaders on the call with Polis. And he would bring on people from the health department. And by the way, I think people look back on COVID, people in our health department, people on all, on all sides of the aisle, every different perspective. And I think everyone is like, oh, they have a long list of things that they wish they could do differently. Mm-hmm. And I genuinely believe, I had an inside look at this, that the people that were leading were doing the best they could at the time. Yeah. And so we would bring on people from the health department and they would share. And then the governor and his team would come on and say, okay, here's the parameters that we've put up. And we want, gatherings of less than 100 and socially distanced. And I don't care if your sanctuary seats 3,000, it can still only be 100. But to his credit, he kept meeting every 2 weeks. We would do these calls. And I remember telling him, hey, let's not do Q&A anymore. This is bad. I don't want any of these faith leaders who are and he was like, no, I want to do it. I'll take it. If they're angry, if they're upset, I want to actually, and he would just put himself out there. Yeah. And it was, I again, a ton of credit to him, but all of the COVID stuff that happened was this beautiful picture of a very high profile government leader saying, I want to create a line of communication with the faith leaders in our state. And even if it's going to be hard, even if there's going to be a lot of negative, emotion around it. And there was, especially as things went on and on, down the road, and these congregations were deeply impacted. But it was special. There's nothing in none of the other states had anything like what we had here. I thought it took a lot of courage from him, and he did, he did a great job. We did those for a year, through that time. And at the end, when things were starting to not make sense, and pastors are walking around Home Depot and there's 200 people in Home Depot and they're being told I can only have 100, and this our governor went and wrestled with this with his team, and he came back and he eventually said, hey, listen, I don't want to get into any of these legal battles. We're not going to show up and put locks on your door. And this was happening in other states. Mm-hmm. He just said, I care about people's health. And if you care about it too, here's the recommendations I'm going to give, but I'm not going to get into these weird legal battles. I'm not going to and there were people that were starting those, and he just pulled back and said, this is my desire. This is my wise counsel to you. But I'm making these suggestions instead of mandates. And I think he earned a lot of eventually down the road. I mean, I think people were bumping up against him on some of that stuff. But I think the way that he handled that situation specifically, earned him a lot of goodwill with faith leaders who don't agree with a lot of the majority of the policies that he makes. Right. So, but it was a really cool example of what can happen if there's relationship and communication between civic and faith leaders.
Do you think that's it? To bring this forward, relationship, and what was your other thing? Communication?
Communication. Yeah. honest communication too. It wasn't like everybody's just playing nice and doing photo ops, with the governor.
Right.
There was a level of like honesty, and he created space for people to be like frustrated.
Yeah.
And he was able to hold that tension. It wasn't like he's like, I'm out. These people are being jerks. So I'm going to like stop having these calls. He kept leaning into it. The faith leaders kept leaning into it. And it was a really special time. And it was hard. It was really hard. People get mad at me. People get mad at me. They'd be like, "You're working for the governor." I run a nonprofit. I don't get paid by the governor or any of his team. And so, which I'm really grateful for. I was able to be kind of like a third party that was just helping bring make those calls happen.
Well, speaking of that, like, how do you avoid this sort of fusing that we've seen in America of faith and politics in a way that confuses allegiance to Christ with allegiance to a political party or a movement?
Well, I don't. I mean, there's people on both sides on the extremes that have zero interest in like coming to the prayer luncheon or being part of anything that I'm doing. Because they feel like that I've sold out on both sides, on one way or the other. And I've just learned, like, I used to let that stuff bother me and like, keep me up at night. And I've just learned to go, you know what, like, let's play ball with the willing. There's way more people that are not on those two extremes that do see the polarization that exists right now, and they're grieved by it. And they know that the only way forward is to be able to hear from different people about who have different opinions, and just try to hang in and stay in relationship with them. And so I think that's the key, is to, like, can you hold that tension? Somebody told me this, I can't remember where it was from, but bridges hold tension. That's the whole key. And if we're going to create bridges, and if we're going to like try to bump up against the polarization that's going on, we need to be able to hold tension if we're going to be bridge builders. And that's the whole key. And it's really hard not to get super anxious, not to get emotional, and to be able to hold that tension and stay in there. But what comes out on the other side of that is, like, I've seen it over and over and over again, is really, really powerful.
I'm thinking of like data from like Ryan Burge and others who have suggested like that it's really a small but very vocal, but also, again, a very small minority who are often the ones making the most noise. Has part of this process been for you, like, recognizing that, like you said before, like, it really is, there's a much bigger majority who don't want to play those games?
Yeah. And I think the tension with that is they're not as vocal. And so what you get, if you're just like looking on social media or different things like that, you get the people that are the most upset. And so it's really easy to like get into this like mindset of going like, man, like we're not making a difference at all, because you're just seeing the negative stuff come at you.
Right.
And I think the truth is that 80% in the middle is there. And I think that they're thirsting for something. They're not as like fired up and angry. And so you're not hearing from them as much. I was listening to, there's a great podcast, Lee C. Camp, it has this podcast, and he was interviewing Malcolm Gladwell, and Malcolm said, man, like what I get on social media is so negative and angry. What keeps me going are the emails. He's like, people that actually write an email to me to talk about this really impacted me. He's like, nobody ever sees that. He goes, but what the people that are like in the business of like making themselves known or their opinions known on social media are usually fired up. They're like mad. Right. And I think I love John McKnight, also passed away within the last couple of years. He did a lot of work around asset-based community development, and he was a community organizer. And early on, he was in Chicago, and he said, like, all the training was figure out what people are angry about and then mobilize them around that. And he got really burned out on it. Yeah. And so he started to flip it, and he started to say, I wonder if we can start identifying what are the assets in these communities, and can we rally people around the assets instead of the deficits? And he said it's way harder. it's so much easier to just figure out what people are pissed off about. He said, but it's so much more life-giving and rewarding and long-term beneficial to actually do asset-based community development instead of just, the opposite of that. And that's really been a helpful thought for me.
Something comes to mind is like I just saw this today or yesterday on Facebook, like, and you know how the influencers now, they do like the hate response videos where like they'll they'll play a clip of their nemesis on social media and respond. Like I saw a video that was like a response to a response to a response. Like they're going back and forth and like, trolling each other's videos. Feels like there's a better way to go forward in life than that.
Yeah, I agree.
But I mean, there is some factuality that like you just said, that's a popular way of moving forward. So you work with churches, you talked about asset-based community development, rallying around that. Like what are some like 1, 2, 3 things you say to churches like, hey, like look at this, number one, like, I don't know, is it as simple as just like, who are your names of your neighbors across the street?
100%. Like, I mean, if I'm talking about the neighboring thing, it's like, how can we make what we're up to as concrete and as clear as possible?
Yeah.
With the neighboring thing, we have this little refrigerator magnet that looks like a tic-tac-toe board. And we just ask people to like use it and to think about their houses in the middle and think about the 8 closest neighbors to them when they walk outside of their apartment, their condo, their house. And we just say, can you just like write down the names of those 8 neighbors, or the adults or the kids in those houses? And if you can't, could you just like have a series of mildly awkward conversations with people to say, hey, like I've lived next to you for 4 years and I've met you 3 times, but I forgot your name.
Yeah.
And then just go write them down and to put it in a place that's visible and to start using their names when you see them. And it's like the lowest common denominator of missional is to think about, who are my neighbors and are they important enough for me to know their names? And it's a Trojan horse to get people to do all kinds of other stuff. Because once you just kind of start the ball rolling with like organic connection, some of those neighbors they're just busy and they don't want to talk to you. And you can tell. Right. Some of those neighbors, if you lean towards them a little bit, you'll be shocked at how they'll lean back towards you. And so I just think as like Christians, we should be catalysts for connection and for community in the places that we live. And I've seen it over and over and over again. I've heard thousands of stories of people who have done this. They've started to like realize that like they don't live where they live by accident, that there's something sacred about their place that they live, that there's something beautiful about proximity-based relationships.
Yeah.
Most of my relationships my whole life are affinity-based relationships.
Yeah.
And we've lost kind of a theology of place.
Yeah.
But when we can rediscover the theology of place, when we can like start to like lean into proximity-based relationships, I think that's where the gospel breaks out.
Well, I want to lean into that here, writing that down, proximity-based relationships, thinking about churches. And this is a podcast that's really focused and centered on churches, and many churches are struggling right now. There's a lot of churches in America that are in struggling neighborhoods or are struggling to meet the needs of their neighbors and to connect with their neighbors. I mean, is it just as simple as like, let's make a map of all our neighbors and figure out their names and believe that like God has us here for a reason?
That's it. That's actually, you just saved all of your listeners the time of reading The Art of Neighboring. You don't need to read it. It's actually that simple.
You sold enough copies already, right?
That's right. It's not that it's not like the church should go do it. It's the people in each church should go do it.
Yeah.
When this thing actually works, it's when the people in congregations realize, hey, I'm going to just like spend more time in my front yard.
Yeah.
I'm going to take walks and just be available and to see what happens. I'm going to live at a pace where I'm available to the people around me instead of always just like going in, get your garage door goes up and then you get your car in and it goes down. It's like that shockingly simple. And what we've seen come out of that over and over and over again has been really profound. And it's the adage, it changes the people it changes those of us who are doing it as much as it changes our neighborhoods. Like God's used, it's been like my marriage. God's used this discipline of engaging in my neighborhood to polish off a lot of my rough edges, and to confront some things in my life that that he wants to see changed, just as much as the impact that I've had on the people that live around me.
Well, good stuff here. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back with some closing questions. All right, we're back with Dave Runyon. Dave, you can, we always tell folks you can take these closing questions as seriously or not as you'd like to. But if you're booked for a day, what do you want to do with that day?
I mean, again, I'm gonna give you another cliche. Like, I have this deep belief that a lot of the stuff would be healed in our churches, in our communities, if like Christians were known for what they're for more than what they're against.
Mm.
And so I think I would bring congregations together, help people see like there's a church of Denver, there's a church of Arvada, of Highlands Ranch, of, St. Louis, wherever it is.
Yeah.
And that I would help people begin to focus on the 98% of things that they have in common instead of the 2% of things that they differ on. And then I would mobilize them to go and to work together in the city, especially to heal some of the brokenness. Because I think the people that aren't involved in church right now are not sitting around waiting for a better sermon or a better worship leader. Right?
Are you sure about that?
I'm positive. They're sitting around going, you know what? All Christians are hypocrites. All church wants is money.
Yeah.
Or they're thinking, there's no way there could be a God because of this like incredibly painful thing that I've seen happen, and I can't reconcile that. Or maybe they have like some intellectual like block.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that like one of the best things we can do as the church is to act in ways that help people to question some of those assumptions, to show up in ways where they go, wow, like maybe some of like my assumptions about Christians aren't right.
Yeah.
And I'm experiencing something from somebody who says that they're a Jesus follower, that feels like a lot different than this stereotype that I've made up in my mind or that I've made up because of an experience.
Yeah.
And so if I was Pope for a day, that would be something that like I would try to mobilize and engage people around the most systemic needs in their community.
Okay, I need to ask you a hard question here because it's coming to mind, and I feel like I got to ask it. You mentioned like the 98% we agree on. There's going to be some things in some churches that they're going to think like you mentioned yourself, like we have our firm convictions. What do you advise? What do you use for yourself when you say like, hey, this is a deal breaker? Like, feel free to give examples or not, but because obviously there's going to be some churches who are going to be like, this is a deal breaker for us. How do you advise churches like, what is a deal breaker? What do you need? Just like, hey, let's set this aside for now.
Yeah. I mean, I think I always go back to like in the essentials, unity, and non-essentials, liberty. And I think trying to figure out what are the essentials. For me, I think we got, we've got some creeds that are like really helpful. Mm-hmm. Like the Apostles' Creed is, when we first started doing this in Arvada, we had some Catholic churches, mainline churches, evangelical churches. And then there was a lot that like, were like, I'm not into this. And so I would just invite the people to the table, and it really comes down to motives.
Yeah.
Like it like the motives piece is like one of the biggest things that I think we have to wrestle through. And so if your motive is, I'm going to go do this so that I can do this and it's going to lead to this, most of those congregations don't come into the room. If they're a congregation that feels like we are 100% right on everything and everyone else is wrong, they're going to opt out.
That's
I like
true.
it. So for me, for me, what mission does, and there's all kinds of church unity stuff. People will do worship services together. They'll do prayer movements together. They'll do all those different things. For me, what was really on my heart was to create and to like get clear on the needs of the city. And so instead of figuring out like, what are the essentials, I would like bring the room together and then say, hey, this is something that I think we're going to go after together. And it's that whole centered set versus bounded set type mentality.
Yeah.
And then people who believed in that and wanted to work together, if others can do that, we would go and work together. It saved me the time of chasing people around and trying to like convince people to do this, which I did plenty of that, by the way, and just learned the hard way. And so
Yeah,
for
sure
me,
it
like
saves-
the Apostles' Creed has been like a foundational thing. Say like this binds us. We used to say the centrality. If you believe in the centrality and supremacy of Jesus Christ, then let's come and play ball together and serve our city together. And so for me, it wasn't like I'm going to nitpick like this issue or that issue. It was much more about creating the room and inviting the people into the room that wanted to be there, without trying to like convince them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It kind of goes to what you're saying, what you're for rather what you're against. You're defining self rather than allowing others to define you, to use like a family systems term. So that's helpful. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Who's a theologian or historical Christian figure you'd want to meet or bring back to life?
Oh, yeah. Like everything that happened around William Wilberforce and the Clapham sect. There's a great book called Bury the Chains. And it tells the story of what happened with the anti-slavery movement in the UK and how this group of 12 to 15 people from different sectors came together and they lived in deep community together. They were committed to walking with each other, living out their faith together. And then they just they stacked hands around the anti-slavery movement and they did it at the right time and they had the right formula. And it made massive changes for, and so they moved the needle. And so I'd want all 12 of them. I want that whole group of the Clapham sect, to be able to spend time with and to go, okay, how much of this has been romanticized? Talk to me about like the disagreements. Where are the times where you thought this whole thing was going to fall apart because people weren't getting along or they were? But I take Wilberforce and his friends, and I'd love to spend time with them.
Yeah, that's a good one. What do you think history will remember from our current time and place?
We're in a liminal time. We are in we're in a liminal moment, and I think that there's these times, what happened after the printing press and the Reformation. I imagine like being a part of that. I would have been so angsty, and I'd been like, nothing's working, and how come? I'd been asking all these questions, and I think we're in that now with the advent of the internet and AI and all the changes. It's caused massive disruption, and I think that we're probably in a 50 or 100 year time period where there's just a lot of disorientation and a lot of unsettling things that are going on.
Well, Dave, thanks for your time. We always leave folks with a word of peace, so may God's peace be with you. Thanks for joining us on the Future Christian Podcast. The Future Christian Podcast is produced by Resonate Media. We love to hear from our listeners with questions, comments, and ideas for future episodes. Visit our website at future-christian.com and find the Connect with Us form at the bottom of the page to get in touch with Martha or Loren. But before you go, do us a favor. Subscribe to the pod to leave a review. It really helps us get this out to more people. Thanks, and go in peace.